Hey y'all, it's Sade here. Welcome back to my channel, All Things Maternal. Today is Father's Day, and although my channel is about my mom, I did want to take a second to really kind of talk about my relationship with my dad, my biological father, that is. I want to talk about our relationship growing up. And just some things I felt like I experienced. In hindsight, after therapy and stuff like that, I kind of do wonder if my mom ran my dad away, if that was, a part of the reason why he wasn't as active in my life as I would have liked him to be when I was a child. But I touch on that in just a couple seconds here. Um, so today, what I want to talk about is just, quite frankly, as a kid, just longing for my father's love. My parents divorced when I was 8 years old, and my mom quickly remarried my stepfather. And so my dad wasn't as around as much as I wanted him to be. He did pay child support, but he wanted very little interaction with my mom. So even when he would drop my child support checks off, he would drop them off in the mail, and then he would call me um, on the house phone when he got home to let me know that, hey, I put the money order in the mail, 20, 30 odd minutes ago, make sure you go outside and get it. And then I would go outside and I would get it, and then I would give it to my mom. And she always used that as an example of why my dad, um, well, she always used it as an example of my dad not wanting to see me or wanting to hang out with me. She would just say, look, see, you know, clearly you did something or something happened that he doesn't want to deal with you face to face. What did you do? And for a very long time, y'all, I did feel like I did something to my dad. But let me backtrack right quick because I wrote a couple of things down. I want to start with my earliest memory. My earliest memory of my dad, honestly, is him beating up on my mom. My mom, I have gotten older and wiser enough to realize that she was a serial cheater. I know this to be true now in hindsight because in my early childhood, like 4 and 5, right when her and my dad were going through, I would say the roughest patch of their relationship from my perception. You know what I mean? Or it could have just been me old enough to really realize, and cling on to the memory to realize it was toxic. But she used to introduce me to a lot of men that she would say were my uncles. Well, my dad didn't have any male siblings. He only had a female sibling, my aunt. And my mom, she had brothers, but they all lived in Florida, and we were in Atlanta at the time. So I never did kind of grasp who these men were. I just knew that they were frequently around, even when my dad was around. And one of those men happened to be my dad's cousin, which I've thought, especially in the last couple of years, to ask him, hey, were you having some type of sexual relationship with my mom? But I never, for one, I never gathered the strength to ask him that. And two, I don't know if I even want to know or even if it's my business at this point. This is something that happened. If I'm 36, this is something that happened, you know, 31, 32 years ago. I think I would feel kind of foolish asking him that question, even though I'm not going to lie. The nosy person in me, I kind of want to know to kind of clear up some misconceptions that I have. But I'm making a healthy assumption here that she was having sex with these men that she would introduce as my uncles. And I'm only saying that because one of those guys she actually ended up marrying, which ended up being my stepdad, who is the father of my younger sister, who is 11 years younger than me. Which, if you watch the podcast that I talked about, the podcast episode on my last video with Ebony, the professional homegirl podcast, if you listen to the podcast, not watch, if you listen to it, then you would know that I actually raised my younger sister. I got custody of her when I was 23, and I raised my younger sister. She was 12 at the time, and I raised her, went through graduation, prom, all these things, even college graduation and stuff with my sister. And that's one of the things that I'm most proud of. I know I'm getting off subject here, but I know I talk about a lot of trauma, but there are some things in my life that I have done that I can look back in hindsight and say, even in the midst of what I had going on, I still was able to maintain certain things. And raising my sister, providing a home for her, even though it wasn't as stable as I wanted it to be in hindsight, because I was going through a lot of stuff, I am very proud of the woman that she has become. But just kind of getting back to what I was talking about, it took me a while to get proud of the woman that my sister became, because, you know, I remember being an 11-year-old girl when she was born, and her father was my father figure at home. Like I said, I didn't see my father very much, and so when she was born, you know, I found myself jealous of my sister, jealous that she had that connection at home that I was missing out on. Can y'all relate? Do you have other siblings that you felt, jealous of because of certain situations they were in, or not even just siblings, but friends and classmates or different things when you were a child that you saw them in what you perceived to be a better predicament than what you were in? Well, that's my relationship with my sister. Middle school, high school, I was so jealous of her, so jealous of her. And she really wanted that connection with me. I could tell even as a toddler, but I was just so kind of adamant of just like, kind of get away from me. And it's one of those things that I regret. But I feel like God used that season in which I raised my sister from 12 to 18 to show me that side that you don't have to be jealous of her. Embrace her and love her because she loves you. And y'all, I love the hell out of my sister. But I'm gonna go back to the past right quick. In speech, just hold on, I'm just scanning and make sure I'm talking about everything I kind of jotted down. So yeah, I didn't see my dad often, and then when I did see him, and I would always get negative feedback from both sides. So, like I told you guys earlier, my mom would always use him, dropping off that that money order off in the mailbox and calling me 30 minutes later and saying that it was outside. She would always use that as proof that he didn't want to interact with me personally. Well, my dad was always telling me he didn't want to interact with my mom, that she was full of, I hate to use the word, but full of shit. Or, he would say all these different things and stuff like that. And so I didn't see him often growing up. I did not really establish a relationship with my dad until I was 22 years old, which was a year after my mom died. However, the same year after his mom died. So my mom died in June of 2008. And then my grandmother, my dad's mom, died in April of 2009. And I distinctively remember having a conversation with my dad maybe a month after my grandmother died. And I said something to him that now I believe is very true. And I told him that we had something in common. I look back on it and I'm like, damn, I hate that we had that in common. He lost his mom and I lost mine. But it left space for us to be able to connect. And it cleared up a lot of misconceptions I had of my father. Like I said, I realized my father was physically abusive to my mom, but I realized in hindsight some of the conversations that they were having in the midst of this, he was beating up on my mom because she was cheating on him. Now, I'm not saying or condoning his behavior at all, but for me, as an adult, it was kind of a sense of relief because I just saw my dad as a monster for so long, not realizing that he was a human being and he had feelings. Should he have put his hands on my mom? Hell no. He should have walked out. He should have left her where she stood. But he stayed and he became physically abusive due to his rage of her sleeping around and stuff like that. And even going so far as I'm like, damn. Not only was she sleeping around, she had the nerve to introduce these men to his daughter, which was me. So my dad beat up on my mom. And eventually she left him, like I said, for one of my uncles, which ended up being my stepfather. But like I said, after my mom passed away and after my grandmother passed away, God opened up a space for me and my dad to become close for the first time in my life. And I remember being a 26, 27-year-old girl, invite my dad over for Father's Day, y'all. I cooked lasagna for my dad. And I think I made like lasagna and a salad or something, maybe a Caesar salad and some garlic bread. And I remember fixing this plate for my dad in my apartment. And I walked over to my dad and I handed him that plate. And for some people that might be small, but for me that was just such a defining moment in my life, especially when I'm talking to you right now and realizing all those years I missed out on having a relationship with my father. And that one moment of just doing something so simple, y'all, it's fixing his plate and giving it to him. Y'all, it made my heart melt. And I want to say a couple of weeks later, we were talking on the phone and he told me he loved me for the first time. Now, I don't know if that was my daddy's first time telling me he loved me, but I know it's the first time I remembered it. And it meant a lot to me. And my dad actually passed away on April 30th, 2018. I never forget. I was having one of my moments when I was going back and forth the days prior to his death. And I was just like, I didn't really want to talk to him. You know, I would go through those stages where sometimes I wanted to talk to my dad and sometimes I didn't. But I was going through a stage. I remember this particular week, I would say, not even a couple days. It was a whole week before his death. And I remember we would play phone tag. He would text me and I wouldn't text back, or I would text him or call him. He wouldn't call back. And I remember, I believe it was a Sunday, he had texted me and he told me that he wanted to see the baby, you know, hopefully one time, you know, that next week, because my son at the time, he was 5 or 6 months old. And I remember my dad texting me to tell me that he wanted to see him because he hadn't seen my son since he came to, y'all, my daddy came to see me and my baby after I had my baby at the hospital. Like, oh, that was just such a defining and exciting moment for me, for my dad to see like the next generation, like his grandson, which was deep. Because I don't know if I talked about it on this channel yet, but I did have an older brother who actually died a couple weeks before I was born. My mom was pregnant with him. I need to find a picture so I can show you guys. My mom was pregnant with me at my brother's funeral. My brother ended up getting pneumonia and died. And so my dad, he struggled with it for a very long time. And I believe also too, that's one of the reasons why he wasn't as close to me. And I don't know. And this isn't something I talked about a therapist with. I've only talked about really my mommy issues. But I've been thinking about going back and talking about it. But anyway, y'all, talking about my dad is just bringing out a side of me that I just. So anyway, that Sunday he texted me that he wanted to see my son, and he texted me something. But it was a typo. I think he meant to say I love you, but he said live you. And y'all, that next day, it was probably around 2:30 or 3 o'clock, my stepmother called me. I guess she ran an errand and she came back home. And when she got home, she told me that basically my dad had died while she was gone. And I don't have that phone anymore, but I screenshotted it and I look at it every now and then when he texts, and he had that typo and he said live you instead of love you. Y'all, my daddy was telling me to live. He was an imperfect man, just like my mom was an imperfect woman. That's why I don't want anybody to ever think this is a channel to bash my mom. Listen, I recognize that my mom was hurt, and so she lashed out at me because it was easy to do. And so I give my mom grace, and I also extend that same grace to my father. He's dead. He made some mistakes. Y'all, he beat my mom. He did. He beat her in front of me. He made some mistakes, but that was still my dad. So I just want to get on here right quick, talk about my dad, and talk about my experience and how I longed for him and I longed for his love. And even though he's dead and we never got as close as I wanted us to get, I am thankful for the times that we did share. I will never forget fixing my dad's plate. Listen, being able to honor my father on that day, every negative memory I had about that man, y'all, it disappeared in that moment I fixed his plate. I felt a sense of joy and just connection. Just doing something as simple as slicing that lasagna and putting it on that plate and giving it to him and just seeing the sparkle in his eye. He set my place, a place that I was working for. Me and my husband, were working for, paying the bills. My dad came over and I could be, you know what I mean? I could be in front of my dad. That's just one of my greatest memories. But I wanted to get on here and share that. As usual, thank you guys so much for the support. If this video resonates with you, please comment below. Please subscribe. I look forward to your guys' comments and stuff as well, being able to interact with you guys. Thank you so much. God bless. Happy Father's Day to you if you're a guy. If you're a female on here, you're married, happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to your dad, to, you know, your homeboy, everybody. If you got a kid, happy Father's Day. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.